Journey to Yandol. Alex Nabihar slumped deeper into the con, her fatigued body refusing to keep up with her still racing thoughts. The closing comments in the case of Mod X6 v. Nabihar echoed in her mind. The justice system of this planet. Alex snorted softly. Justice didn't fit in the same sentence as the Mod X system. Had she been up against a farming peasant, she might have had a chance. Butting heads with Police Commissioner Bandy Perrine, on the other hand, was an exercise in futility. Alex, is that short for Alexandria? The voice of her passenger interrupted her thoughts. No, it's short for Alex, she remarked bluntly. I generally don't take passengers. If I hadn't had court costs to cover, I wouldn't have accepted you. And when I do accept passengers, I generally do not permit them access to the bridge. After a pause, Alex swung the con about to face the man she was taking to the Felite system. Please return to your cabin. Accommodations are minimal, but you are welcome to whatever food or drink you can find. Ravin Sabik ruffled his fingers through his coarse, dark hair. The only food I sought was food for the mind. But if there is none to be found, the sallow-skinned man let his voice trail off with a slight smile, maintaining eye contact with the fair-skinned, fair-haired woman pilot. I'm selfish, I keep the best food for myself, Alex stated flatly. We're nearly out of Modek now, and we'll make the jump to Haleen in about 20 minutes. Then it will be Zaire, then on to Felite. I'm familiar with the route, Ravin nodded, the faint smile never fading from his lips. Alex shrugged and spun about in the con, pointedly ignoring the man. The soft swishing of the door announced his departure a moment later. The trip to Haleen and Zaire was uneventful. Aside from the rote tasks of piloting the sweet journey, Alex spent her time reviewing her problems on Mod X6 and trying to make sense of it all. After unloading her cargo of fruit products on the planet, Alex had given the sweet journey over to port maintenance for scanner calibration. To pass the time during the maintenance work, she had settled into a booth in a nearby bistro to enjoy a tall coffee, iced. It was a soothing relief after the headache-inducing heat of the deserts of central Macallan. Within moments of relaxing in her window booth, Alex met Commissioner Perrine. Her first impression of the commissioner was negative. To the tall pilot, Perrine came off as a short, fat, greasy drunk. There was nothing about his appearance or demeanor that would suggest he held an official position. The commissioner had approached Alex and asked to sit down. She agreed out of boredom mixed with curiosity, but in retrospect, she regretted the decision. Alex had accepted Perrine's offer of another coffee, after which the man made it bluntly clear that he wanted to spend the night with her. I think not, but thank you for the coffee, was her immediate reply. Alex was accustomed to her looks attracting men of all walks of life, but she had few friends who were male. The only man Alex could think of in any romantic sense lived in the Lopez system, and she missed him beyond words. Commissioner Perrine would have made a poor substitute, but he couldn't fathom rejection. Instead of accepting her refusal, he had reached out and grasped Alex's hand tightly. Alex immediately knew that walking out was the best move she could make. She had no doubt that she could have overpowered the man, but her experience had taught her that there was only one path a physical confrontation would lead to. She would end up in court, being blamed for teasing the man and causing the fight. It was much safer to simply swallow her pride and walk away. When she rose to her feet, however, Perrine also stood and grabbed her by the arm. She pulled away forcefully, and Perrine let go of her so suddenly that she lost her balance and sat down hard on the floor. Her reflex to draw her pistol brought forth the two peace officers in the bistro, and she soon found herself in a local imprisonment facility with her pistol permanently impounded. The IMFAC was notably more secure than most of its type on other planets, and this difference was not lost on Alex. Mod X6 was definitely on the rough side. Her time in court was a slap in the face of truth and justice. Alex was treated as the criminal and Commissioner Perrine the innocent victim. The pilot had been told in no uncertain terms that Mod X6 did not tolerate villainy, and strong hints were dropped that she was nothing more than a crooked prostitute. She was escorted under armed guard to the sweet journey and told to leave immediately. Furthermore, she was prohibited from returning within one co-op year. Alex had declined to argue the point and prepared to leave promptly. Her departure was delayed at the last moment by the boarding of a civilian passenger. The port authorities, clearly set on harassing Alex, told her that the passenger had been warned of her violent tendencies. Ravin Sabik boarded only minutes later, stopping first to surrender his fare to the port authorities to pay for Alex's court costs. They departed with no further delay. Now Alex and the Sweet Journey were headed to Felite with only a passenger, not having had time to load cargo on Modex 6. Alex was glad that the scanner work had been completed in time, but regretted losing the chance to fill her cargo bays. With luck, the port at Felite would have some 9x cargo ready to load. The Sweet Journey was one of the fastest cargo ships of its size in the Co-op's registry of private freighters, allowing Alex to take precedence at a port with the urgent and high-paying 9x category of military cargo waiting for transport. Her income from the steady shipping diet of 9x allowed Alex to maintain a decent retreat home in the Lopez system. Upon reaching the Zaire system, the Sweet Journey was forced into a holding pattern by command of the Zaire governorship. A military convoy passing through the system on official business forced all civilian vessels to remain outside of the Zaire orbitals until the Armada had passed. The ships were too distant to see on the vid, so Alex watched the large blips moving ponderously on her scanner. The formation was quite large, and Alex guessed that it was headed to crush another planetary rebellion. She knew no word of such a rebellion would come from official sources, but she enjoyed the friendship of a man who worked in the Central Communications Censorship Office at Co-op headquarters. The last rebellion that was large enough to be discussed publicly via mass media had been the Axaran Rebellion. At the height of its power, the Axaran Rebellion included 12 systems and 15 of the free-floating planetoids known as independents. It was speculated that most of the revolutions since the dismemberment of the Axaran Rebellion were actually pockets of Axaran resistance. After all, most of them had centered on the independents, the main strength of the rebellion itself. Of the original 15 independents, only 5 had been man-made and mobile. The other 10 were planetary fragments. Those 10 independents no longer existed. Co-op warships had destroyed everyone, in addition to several planets in the 12 rebellion systems. Ah, Wanderlust, Alex smiled, remembering the independent she had most recently visited. Wanderlust was a planetary fragment, one that was always nominally loyal to the Co-op. As with all natural independents, the entire population lived below the surface. And as was generally expected of such societies, the laws were few and rarely enforced. But rather than letting anarchy turn to violence, as was most common, a permanent sense of revelry maintained Wanderlust's galaxy-wide reputation as the first and foremost recreation spot when seeking drunkenness, debauchery, and general wildness. Alex always found the name Co-op amusing. It implied an attitude of cooperation. In reality, systems were normally brought under control of the Co-op by force and required to pay regular tribute in the form of administrative taxes. In return, the Co-op promised to provide protection from enemies, peace within Co-op systems, and benefits of society. These promises were unfulfilled in most cases. The standardized trade, law, and other benefits of society were found only in the core systems. In many systems, the broken promises invoked anger. On Wanderlust, those unfulfilled promises were an excuse for wanton carousing. A sharp pinging on the bridge brought Alex out of her reverie. An unknown party was sending a message to the Sweet Journey. Did she wish to receive? Alex punched the receive button to copy the message to the buffer. Once buffered, she saw that it was a private message for her passenger. She shrugged and pressed the intercom call button to get his attention. Yes, Raven replied sleepily. You have a message. Private and urgent. What's it say? The man's smirk was obvious in his voice. I don't know, it's private, Alex repeated, quietly restraining the urge to sigh in annoyance. Probably encrypted, too. Mind if I patch it through? As you wish, Raven answered. Alex rolled her eyes and sent a copy of the message to Raven's cabin. If she was really interested in finding out what it said, it was on record for her to decrypt later. However, she had no immediate interest. Her curiosity was sparked a few minutes later, however, when Raven burst onto the bridge. Can we divert? Alex looked at the man. Of course we can divert. Where and why? I've just received word from one of my brothers. My father is dying from a farm accident. Can we go to my birth home on Yandol 7A? He may not live long. The pilot shrugged, then nodded. She didn't think Yandol 7A or 7B would have any cargo that would pay the same as 9X, but there was still a fair amount of trade to be had from the linen mills of Yandol 7B. Alex had been curious about the 2 planets that shared an orbital, and this was as good of an excuse as she'd ever get to see them. It didn't hurt that the Yandol system was a short distance from Zaire, and in a direction that would allow them to proceed without waiting for the co-op armada to pass. Alex turned the sweet journey about and entered the new coordinates. After a brief message to the governorship of Zaire that she and her passenger would not be moving through the Zaire system after all, Alex set the sweet journey in motion toward Yandol. The trip to Yandol would require passing through 3 systems and an independent, but the distances were relatively short. Alex instructed her passenger to return to his quarters, but her reasons were little more than wanting to daydream, undisturbed, about running cargo like normal, away from the last influence of Modek. Alex was giving herself a vacation on Lopez 3 in just 2 co-op days, and she was finally beginning to believe it might be more than a daydream. The sweet journey made good time through 2 intermediate systems. When they reached the mobile Jeopardy Independent, Alex gazed longingly toward the bars on the perimeter. She wanted a drink and a break from the con, and the mobile Independence designers had artfully placed the drinking establishments in clear view of passing ships. The massive flashing neon signs winked at Alex, and she remembered that an added benefit of Jeopardy was a multitude of casinos that outnumbered any other independent, mobile or otherwise. As with all mobile independents, Jeopardy was assigned a region of space, always on a major shipping lane, for 5 years, during which it could exact a toll from all ships passing through. As Alex placed her payment in a toll probe, she considered having Raven reimburse her for the expense, but decided against it in light of his family emergency. From Jeopardy, it was a short jump to Yandol. As the sweet journey moved in toward the G-class star of Yandol, Alex began to feel impatient. Even given the opportunity to view the planetary oddity of a shared orbital, she was tired of the runaround that had started in the Modek system. She was deep in frustrated thought when the door swished open, revealing a soused Raven Sabic. "We're almost there," Alex stated, trying to ignore the stench of cheap whiskey that flowed toward her from her passenger. The sweet journey was never stocked with liquor, so Alex knew the man had brought his own. Probably Togath Black Vine, from the smell of it. "I can see." "That for myself," Raven replied, slurring his words and pausing to hiccup painfully. "So how about you stay with me for a few days while I get things settled? I'll need transport out of here to Felite anyway." "No, why not?" Alex forced herself to stay calm as Raven came up and put his hand on her shoulder. "I'll show you a good time." "No. I'm going to pick up any cargo that's not allotted to a freight line and head out within the day," Alex answered firmly. "Return to your quarters for landing. We got a dull hour or 2 yet. Come back with me and we can play a game or 2. Alex was facing away from Raven, and he began toying with her hair. "Want a drink?" Alex had grown up with an older stepbrother, and they had fought constantly, both verbally and physically. She had become an adept fighter, and she had never forgotten that experience. It served her well, and it served her now. Without turning, Alex snatched Raven's hand and drew him forward around the con, tripping him to his knees with her foot. In one fluid motion, she had him face down on the bridge with her knee at the back of his neck. "I don't drink when I'm in control of my ship. I also don't stoop to drink with people like you. Return to your quarters peacefully, or I will drag you and lock you in. I do not approve of your drunken behavior. I never asked you to approve. I don't think you're strong enough to drag me anywhere." Raven giggled and tried to get up. A sharp pain from Alex's knee convinced him to stay on the floor. Alex fished a small instrument from her tool belt. "You aren't trustworthy. If only you knew." The man's voice trailed away as Alex touched 2 small metal points on the instrument into his lower neck. His back muscles twitched involuntarily, and he lay still and quiet. "Grief is no excuse for drunkenness," Alex said to the stunned man's back. He couldn't hear her, she knew, so it was more of an affirmation to herself than an insult to him. She replaced her stunner in her tool belt, picked up Raven in a fireman's carry, and hauled him to his quarters. Alex dropped him roughly on his bed and returned to the con, locking Raven's door from the outside in the process. Co-op speed limits made the trip from the edges of the Yandol system to Yandol 7 slower than Alex would have liked. The Yandol system was a crowded system with 14 planets and major planetoids. 4 of these were so close to Yandol itself that the heat made them virtually uninhabitable. 3 of those 4 rotated, effectively roasting all sides, and the other was so close that the approach to the dark side required more shielding than most ships carried. Of the 10 other planets, 2 shared the 7th orbital, the only recorded case of a shared orbital. The 2 planets stayed on opposite sides of Yandol, and research had shown no drift that would bring them together. Raven groggily answered Alex's call to him when they began the final approach to Yandol 7A. The planet had 5 major spaceports that handled passengers and cargo, in addition to the 2 cargo-only pole ports, and Alex needed to know which port was closest to Raven's destination. He grumpily gave her the beacon number before shutting off the intercom. The pilot assumed her passenger would be cognitive enough to strap himself in for landing and tightened her own restraints. The sweet journey descended easily through the atmosphere of the brownish planet, following the port beacon. By that point, the port had almost total control of the craft, and Alex was only responsible for the actual touchdown. Not my idea of a vacation hot spot, Alex mused as she watched the planet's surface rush toward her. Dense clouds of smog drifted across a landscape that appeared to be a patchwork consisting of highly industrialized areas separated by lakes and marshes. Presumably, the planet had limited ground suitable for building on, and that real estate was being pushed to hold more than Alex thought sensible. The local government was obviously sloppy, considering the extensive air pollution, and Alex got the distinct impression that the Yandol system in general was an industrial, blue-collar system. The beacon guided the sweet journey to a busy port on the edge of a dirty, cluttered city. To the north, west, and south of the port, a murky bog gave rise to mists that drifted in an uneasy breeze. The city to the east was a study in chaos. No distinct plan could be found in the design or placement of buildings, and there was a steady flow of near-frantic traffic moving in and around the city. Much of this traffic was airborne, and Alex cringed as she watched near misses that seemed to be the rule instead of the exception. The port itself consisted of a large, unkempt concrete field, surrounded by dirty brown buildings that served unmarked purposes. A short, static-filled message blasted over the common line, telling Alex which pad to use for landing. "We're down," Alex commented over the intercom once her craft was settled on the surface. She unlocked Raven's door from the con, disconnected her restraints, and stood to stretch. A moment later, the door swished open to reveal a disheveled Raven. "I see," the man nodded, then paused uncomfortably. I'm sorry if I acted the fool. This hangover and..." Raven paused to massage the wrist that Alex had used as a handhold when subduing him. "And other factors have given me reason to reconsider my behavior. It happens," Alex shrugged, pulling her flight bag from its locked compartment over the con. "Hope your father pulls through." Raven nodded glumly and looked around nervously. "Look, can I at least make it up to you? My brother will be coming to meet me here at the port, but I can't expect him for another hour or 2. Can I at least buy you a drink or a coffee at the port cafeteria?" Alex looked blankly at her passenger. Did he know the hassles she'd had the last time she let a man buy her a coffee? Probably not. She was inclined to say no, considering her trouble with Commissioner Perrine, and considering Raven's own overtures during the trip. The temptation of coffee was too great, however. "Yes, I'll have a coffee with you. I'll pay, though. I need to pick up some cargo to make this all worthwhile, and I don't have anything better to do while it's loading." She led Raven off the ship to meet the port hand. "Staying long? Need anything?" the young man waiting on the pad asked as Alex debarked. "No longer than necessary. Get me the best paying cargo you can find. If it's 9X, I'll double the usual 5% finder fee," Alex replied, shouldering her flight bag. "I can take up to 500 banks, preferably all to the same destination. No more than 2 destinations, and 80% full if you can manage it. No pod either. If you can't find anything suitable, forget it, and I'll try 7B. Got a cafeteria around here?" The port employee jerked his thumb toward the city. "East Edge. Any repairs? Nothing that I know of. I'll be in the cafeteria if you have any questions or run across something strange. I'll give you an extra percentage if you can get me out of here before nightfall." "Probably can't, but I'll try," the young man shrugged, checking his watch. As Alex started off toward the cafeteria, with Raven following close behind, the port hand pulled a comlink from his belt to call for a cargo report. The cafeteria was small and crowded, and the 2 travelers were lucky to find a table to themselves next to a window that looked toward the city. Raven borrowed a rag from a waitress to wipe off the greasy tabletop while Alex placed their order. Alex only wanted coffee, not trusting the port cafeteria to have food worth the name, but Raven ordered several items from the menu, mostly foods local to the planet. Once seated across from each other at their table, Raven looked at Alex and smiled, nodding. "You run a good business," the man said. "You are very efficient, and you get what you want from people who don't normally perform their services well. You will be an asset to a shipping company, indeed. Why are you running your own independent business? Alex shrugged, wondering why the man was taking such an interest in her business. Regardless of his motive, she felt it best to generalize her comments. Freedom is the prime reason, I suppose. I set my own schedule and don't work when I don't want to. From what I could see of your ship, you certainly work often enough to accumulate a bit of wealth, Raven grinned. Many in your place would never rise above slumhood out of sheer laziness. I'm lazy too, Alex smiled emptily, trying to move away from any discussion of her wealth. Money was far too personal of a topic to discuss with a man she could not trust. Most of my friends are lazy, too. We just know the proper way to be lazy. It takes work to get it right. Raven chuckled. An amusing thought. After a moment, he sobered. If you were given a good, solid offer from a shipping company, would you take it? No, not even give it a thought. Not even if they could ensure you always carried the best of cargo, on the best of routes. Raven asked, leaning forward a bit. Freedom is more important. Alex shook her head and looked away. She was beginning to put together a better mental picture of the man across the table from her. It seemed he had a commercial interest in her ability to conduct efficient business. For a successful private shipper, as Alex considered herself, recruitment offers were nothing rare. I'd rather retire in poverty than be subservient to a company. Raven made an abrupt humming noise in his throat. You almost sound like a smuggler. Alex looked at the man sharply. That is an insult. If you cannot even be pleasant company for coffee, I will not sit with you any longer. Raven sat back and relaxed. I apologize, I didn't intend offense. Smugglers are an independent lot, and they often feel the same way you do. It is good to know that you express your independence in a legal manner. The two sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. Alex regretted, once again, accepting an invitation to coffee. It angered her that it was so difficult to enjoy good company and good coffee at the same time. Her vacation could not come soon enough. There would be long hours of doing nothing other than sitting before a fire with close friends, sipping coffee, with no rude passengers or crowded, dirty port cafeterias. A commotion near one of the doors of the cafeteria caught their attention. Alex looked over her shoulder to see a young woman struggling to escape the grasp of an obviously drunk man. In one hand, the man had a strong hold of the woman's hair. The other hand was locked securely on one of her arms. The man was babbling in a local dialect, but it was obvious to onlookers that he expected the woman to stay. The woman didn't say anything, but just struggled to free herself and leave. With empathy welling up inside, Alex jumped up and delivered a swift jab to the back of the man's neck. Before he could turn on her, Alex deftly applied her stunner to the man's lower back. He convulsed once and dropped to the floor, staring blankly at nothing. Wait, Alex shouted as the other woman raced for the door, finally free from the drunkard. The younger woman didn't even slow down, however, and when Alex followed her outside of the cafeteria, she saw that the woman had already departed by way of an air taxi. She felt a queasy sensation in her stomach as she re-entered the cafeteria. Of all the people in the room, the only person not staring at Alex was Raven Sabic. Let me guess, she started, looking at a waitress behind the counter. I'll bet he's a government official. Not that I know of, missy, the aging waitress replied. But you'd better have a good explanation for why you attacked him, considering he didn't do anything to you. Alex looked around at the staring faces. He was hurting that other woman and I was just trying to help her. I didn't see anything, the waitress shrugged, turning away. As if on cue, the rest of the people in the cafeteria turned away as if nothing had happened. Alex stared down at the stunned man on the floor and wondered just how much trouble she'd made for herself this time. She was getting tired of the hassles and decided right then that her vacation would start as soon as she could reach Lopez. The man on the floor stirred and looked up at Alex with a confused look. His expression changed slowly as he realized what had happened, and he made a low, snarling sound as he stood. Alex took a defensive stance, but instead of attacking, the man strode to a comlink mounted on a nearby wall. With a mental groan, Alex knew he was going to call the local law enforcement agency. She quickly turned and headed back to her table. I need to get out of here, she snapped at Raven. This is your planet. What suggestions do you have? Raven shook his head. You won't like it. The only suggestion I have is to stay put and wait for the port police. If you leave now, you'll definitely be seen as guilty. However, if you stay, you might be able to make a case for yourself. Of course, it doesn't look good. Some help you are, Alex rolled her eyes. And I probably can't escape on my ship, since it's in the middle of cargo loading, and they'd prevent me from reaching it anyway. Will you at least tell them what you saw? Certainly, Raven smiled, nodding. His smile faded quickly as he caught sight of a man entering the cafeteria. Or perhaps I cannot. My brother has arrived. Raven motioned to attract the newcomer's attention, waving him toward their table. Alex nodded in reply to Raven's introduction of his brother, and paid the brother little heed. You won't stay, would you, were your father dying? Raven replied. I would like to, but I think you are resourceful enough to get out of this. Just handle it like any other business transaction. I must go, really. Alex sat down and ignored the departure of the two men. Despite the fact that her last chance for a witness had just walked out the door, she wasn't unhappy to see Raven leave. He had been a trouble, and she was tired of troubles. Her true friends on Lopez would have a good laugh when she described the most recent turn of events in her transport business. She'd laugh too once she got there. Getting there was the hard part. Ma'am, a deep voice startled Alex out of her gloom. We need to talk to you. Alex looked up to see two uniformed men standing next to her table, with the man she had attacked standing smugly behind them. The man who had apparently spoken was tall and heavy, and his companion was short and slight of build. Both wore dark gray port employee outfits. She nodded at the speaker and rose to her feet. This gentleman claims you attacked him. He is no gentleman. I was assisting a woman he was accosting and applied a slight stun to subdue him, Alex stated flatly. The taller officer looked around the cafeteria. Is that woman here? Or can anybody else here vouch for your story? No, Alex shook her head, glaring at the three men before her. It was obvious that the port police knew she would have no witnesses. Please come with us. We can sort this out at headquarters, the officer in charge said, gesturing for Alex to lead the way out of the cafeteria. Once outside, Alex saw that a small surface vehicle awaited. The larger officer confiscated Alex's stunner before ordering her to sit in back with the other officer. As they pulled away from the cafeteria and headed toward a large 7-story building, Alex closed her eyes and tried to wake herself from this unbelievably bad dream. When they reached the port headquarters, Alex and the man she had stunned were ushered into the police section and placed in separate rooms. The man seemed oddly sober, considering how drunken he had appeared before, but Alex assumed it was an effect of the stun. She was left to wait alone in the small, unadorned interrogation room. It was furnished only with a table in the center and a chair on each side. Alex sat facing the door and pondered her new brush with the police. She could hardly believe that she had found herself in such similar situations on 2 different planets in such a short amount of time. It was very odd. The paranoia bug sank its teeth into Alex's conscious mind. Had it all been a plans? It seemed impossible. Such an elaborate plan would be so difficult to pull off. It would certainly have required participation by a large number of people, all who had specific parts to play. One of those people was Raven, yet if he had been part of a plan, she should be stuck in the Felite system, not the Yandol system, unless the planners had also caused the accident that threatened Raven's father's life. As Alex waited for the interrogation to begin, she grew increasingly curious about the message that Raven had received while they were waiting to pass through Zaire. Had it said more about the accident? Perhaps his brother had mentioned sabotage, but Raven hadn't wanted to share that information with Alex. Or perhaps it hadn't been an accident at all, but a blatant attack. Or was there even an accident? They shouldn't be so sloppy here, Alex muttered, pulling a minilink from the inner lining of her tool belt. A single press of the sole button on the face of the comlink put her in touch with her ship's computer. Alex quickly thumbed the volume dial on the side to its minimum setting, in case the room was bugged. Report, decrypted message received for Raven Sabik. There was a brief pause. The soft, masculine, synthesized voice of the computer on board the Sweet Journey then began. 71.463. Raven, you codger. The bimbo is mindless. I will reach Yandol well in advance of your arrival. Use the dying father story to get there. I'm sure it will work. Get her to the cafeteria and keep her there. Javis and Tammy will provide a distraction that she won't ignore, and Tor will meet you shortly afterward. I'm quite sure that Javis will be able to pull strings with the Port Authority to keep Alex busy while her cargo is unloaded. If she gives you any trouble, be sure to let me know so we can load a nasty surprise for her. Deep space explosions are so hard to trace, eh? We might do that anyways. See you on Yandol. Bandy, Alex snarled. Bandy parrying. The realization of how she had been set up hit her like a bucket of ice water. The plan for her had been laid out, and she had complied with it every step of the way. She wondered what cargo had been loaded on the sweet journey while she was in court on Modex 6, but there was no doubt it was illegal. Drugs, weapons, who could tell? A few people had been paid off to look the other way during loading and unloading, and the pilot of the ship that carried the contraband didn't even know it was on board. It was a risky operation, but it had certainly been effective. Alex quickly replaced the Minilink in her belt when she heard footsteps approaching. Another uniformed man opened the door and gestured for her to follow. Instead of being interrogated, as she had assumed would happen, she was led to a room where the man she had stunned sat in a chair next to a desk, behind which sat an older man in port uniform. What had the message said the man's name was. Javis. Alex's guide left her standing, facing the desk and the man behind it. She ignored Javis for the time being. I am Lieutenant Rillo, the man behind the desk stated. I hear that you assaulted this gentleman in the cafeteria. Your story is that you were assisting a woman who cannot be found. No witnesses are available to verify your story, but your possession of the weapon and the marks on this gentleman's back certainly leave little doubt that you did, indeed, assault him. Your justification is not proven. What have you to add? I have only to add that Javis and Tammy are friends and that I acted rashly, Alex replied, looking at Javis to watch his reaction. He startled but said nothing. The lieutenant looked at Javis and then again at Alex. To whom are you referring? This man's name is not Javis. Yes, it is, Alex smiled. He and Tammy seemed to be struggling in the doorway of the cafeteria, and in foolish haste, I came to Tammy's aid. You could ask Ravin Sabik or Bandy Perrine about it. You'll find them unloading contraband from the sweet journey. It was a severe gamble. If Javis had not reacted, she would have had a difficult time explaining why she had brought contraband to the planet. Her gamble paid off. Javis stood quickly, made to lunge at Alex, then thought better of it. Before the lieutenant could realize the shift of mood in the room, Javis tackled him, smashing him out of his chair. A roar filled the room as Javis yanked the pistol from Lieutenant Rillo and shot him in the head. Alex had anticipated this reaction, and she was already leaping over the desk when Javis tried to turn the pistol on her. She slammed him against the wall before he could fire. A quick knee in the groin doubled Javis in pain, and a sharp jab at his wrist dropped the pistol to the floor. Alex managed to get her toe to the gun before Javis could reach it, and she sent it spinning across the tiles. As the man tried to rise up, Alex brought her elbow down hard on the back of his neck, forcing him to his hands and knees. This opened her path to the pistol, and she jumped for it. Stop, Alex commanded, pointing the weapon at Javis as he rose, snarling. Her eyes flicked down momentarily at the dead lieutenant, but she had no time for corpses. You will. No, I take that back. That shot will bring in the whole police force. I cannot use you. The pistol roared again, and Javis crumpled dead to the floor. The body had hardly come to rest when the door opened. What? A young orderly in port uniform stood in the doorway, confused at the scene of violence before him. Alex was also confused for a moment. Hadn't he heard the shot? Perhaps the room was soundproofed. Freeze, Alex snapped, pointing the pistol at the young man. Turn around, then take 3 steps backward into the room. The orderly looked bewildered, but followed her instructions promptly. Alex moved up behind him and removed the pistol from his belt. I'm not a criminal, actually, she continued, moving around so he could see her training the lieutenant's gun on him. At least I don't mean to be. That man, Javis, shot your lieutenant. He's a smuggler. The man blinked stupidly at Alex. This was probably the youngster's first time to be on the receiving end of a weapon. Are you going to kill me? No, Alex shook her head, not if you behave. You're going to lead me out of this building and secure for me transportation to the ship's sweet journey. After that, you will wait until that ship has departed before reporting the death of your lieutenant and the smuggler. I will hide this pistol, but it will be trained on you until I am headed safely to my ship. Do you understand? The young man nodded. Good. If anybody asks you about releasing me, you will inform them that the man who was going to press charges has decided against it. Any questions? The orderly shook his head. Alex opened the door and gestured for the young man to lead the way. By the way, what's your name? Praglio, her guide replied. I haven't been assigned a rank yet, Just as well, Alex muttered to him as they began walking through the halls toward a staircase. Maybe you'd be better off in another line of work. The two descended several flights of stairs before reaching the ground level. They had to wait on the bottom step while a cleaning robot finished sweeping the landing, and while they did, two officers came up from the basement. One was unfamiliar to Alex, but the taller of the two men was the tall officer who had brought her to the police headquarters. She held her breath, expecting him to turn around, but he and his companion strolled away down the hall without looking back at the stairs leading up. Once the robot completed its task and rolled away to its next job, Alex and her guide followed the other officers down the hall toward the building's main entrance. Alex's heart skipped a beat when they found the other two men standing outside near a line of surface vehicles. The officer that Alex recognized turned to look at them as they departed the building, and was obviously startled to see her out of the building. With his hand on his pistol, he moved to stop Praglio and Alex. "Where are you taking this woman?" the officer demanded of the young orderly. "She was released and requires transportation to her ship," Praglio answered nervously. "The man who was going to press charges against her has decided against it." "Nonsense," the officer in charge snapped, and Alex realized that the man was probably on Perrine's payroll. Before he could order Praglio to take her back inside, Alex dropped to one knee and drew the dead lieutenant's pistol. The double roar echoed off the port buildings as the two officers slumped to the ground. Praglio stared in horror at the bodies, then at Alex. "That wasn't supposed to happen," Alex growled at herself. "Can you drive these things?" Praglio nodded. "Let's get going." Now, several police officers burst out of the building, with weapons drawn just as Praglio and Alex pulled away in one of the ground cars. Alex was glad that Praglio had enough self-preservation sense to swerve amidst the gunfire directed at their car, and she fired several shots randomly at the building to keep the officers ducking for cover. Praglio sped out toward the sweet journey, but had only covered half the distance when a laser blast from the headquarters building punched through the engine compartment. With smoke billowing wildly from the rear, the vehicle's power died and they jerked to a stop. Praglio grabbed Alex's arm and pointed at a nearby blast shelter. All ports had subsurface shelters built between landing pads for emergency cover, planning ahead for crash landings and reactor explosions. Dense smoke obscured the closest shelter from the headquarters building, and Alex followed her guide's lead. The booming of weapons convinced them to keep low to the ground as they darted for cover, and they dove behind a blast shield as an artillery shell struck the ground car. "Good thinking, but why are you helping me so much?" Alex demanded breathlessly as they ducked into the underground bunker room. "I don't want to die because of you," Praglio sniffed. "We're not exactly out of danger yet. You're still not on your ship, and I have yet to explain how I was kidnapped and forced to help you escape." Alex shrugged. "We have a few minutes before anybody we need to worry about will get here. I don't know what I'm doing. This all started innocently enough, but I've been set up, and the harder I try to get out of it, the more damage I end up doing. I don't even know why I'm trying to get to the journey. Why wouldn't you? I can't very well blast myself out of this port without endangering myself and other innocent ships. In addition, the smugglers who set me up are probably in control of my ship, and if they've gotten wind of what I'm doing, they're going to prevent me from reaching it. And since it will seem they are just cargo movers who stopped a fleeing smuggler, they'll be seen as heroes. What am I doing?" Alex sat down on the concrete floor and put her head in her hands. Praglio sat down facing her, wishing the shelters were furnished. "How about giving yourself up and telling them how you were set up? Nobody will believe me, and some of your police friends are doing business with the smugglers. Let's try reaching your ship. Give me my pistol back. I'm a fair shot, and I might be able to hit or scare off somebody." Praglio extended his hand to her and smiled. Alex stared. "You're crazy. Why should I trust you? And even if I did, and you didn't just shoot me as soon as you got a chance, do you really think you'll do any good from this range?" Praglio shrugged his shoulders, but said nothing and left his hand out. Alex rolled her eyes. "May as well get this over with now. They'll be here any second now, anyway." Praglio accepted the pistol from Alex and turned away. He darted to the entrance, peered around the blast shields toward the sweet journey, then back toward police headquarters. With the smoke clearing, he could see several vehicles, airborne and on the ground, heading directly at them. He aimed carefully at one of the air cars and fired. Still in the bunker's lower room, Alex was startled to hear the shot. She ran out to find him aiming again. "Missed or didn't hit anything vital. They're coming for us." "We've got less than a minute," Praglio reported. His pistol roared again, and one of the air cars pulled up sharply, turned, and started slowly back to the headquarters building. "Got one," Alex peeked around the blast shield, and was amazed to see how far away the air cars were. Praglio was definitely better than a fair shot. She turned away and looked toward her ship. Several cargo vehicles were parked next to it, and she could see that they were still unloading the contraband. She took careful aim at one of the cargo trucks, fired, and waited for some kind of reaction. She couldn't tell if she'd hit anything, but she knew she'd attracted their attention when several small weapons clattered in reply. She ducked back to avoid being hit, just in time to hear a tremendous roar in the direction of the police headquarters. "Got another," Praglio commented. "They've stopped and they're gathering, probably to discuss how to approach without getting killed. The air cars have all turned back, except the one that just crashed." Alex moved to look toward the halted police force. A large fire was burning to her left, and Alex could see a twisted air car hull amidst the flames. "Fair shot," she said to herself, raising her eyebrows. She then spoke up so that Praglio could hear her over the booming coming from the Sweet Journey. "We're in trouble. I got the smuggler's attention, but probably shouldn't have." Praglio looked at her. "So now we're going to be attacked on two sides. You must have a desire to die today, and for some reason I must share your fate. Well, man your side, and I'll man mine. If you think of anything clever to do, do it. I'll do my best here." "Right," Alex said gloomily and turned away. Once her back was turned, Praglio pulled a small box from his pants pocket and pushed the only button on it before turning to take aim at a police ground car. Alex looked toward her ship and saw that one of the cargo vehicles was pulling away. She assumed they were trying to get as much of the contraband out of the firefight as they could, so she took careful aim at the driver's compartment and fired twice. The second shot seemed to hit the right area, for the vehicle began swerving. It was obviously out of control, and moments later slammed into an outbuilding near the landing pad. Inspiration hit Alex with a mixture of elation and guilt. Damning herself for not thinking of it earlier, she pulled the Minilink from her belt. With luck, the smugglers wouldn't notice that she was accessing the main computer on the Sweet Journey, and they would all have a nasty surprise. She pressed the button and spun the volume dial to its maximum. "Report number of personnel on board. 2, the synthesized voice replied. "Define command heard. Guide objects with minimal force toward a given destination, primarily by progressively limiting movement options." "Verify, understood," the Sweet Journey's computer answered calmly. Alex wished she could share that freedom from panic. "Herd personnel off of ship and secure against re-entry," she commanded. "Report when complete." Alex waited for what seemed an eternity for her computer to report its progress. She was thankful that the command definition had worked on the first try. This was no time to try to explain anything in detail. Alex could hear Praglio talking, but couldn't make out what he was saying, and assumed he was muttering to himself about their predicament. She was surprised that he hadn't simply shot her, or tried to run away. Was he that much of a coward? Or was he secretly enjoying the adventure? "All personnel have debarked and all doors are locked and sealed," the synthesized voice startled Alex. "Shields up," she barked, and hoped she had done it in time. The crew working on unloading the contraband had certainly realized something was wrong with the ship, and they would soon realize she was in control and try to blast their way back in. If nothing else, it would distract them from firing at her and Praglio. To press the point, she continued in a calmer voice, "Raise 5 meters and stand steady." "Can you locate me?" "Negative," the computer responded, as it brought the Sweet Journey up to hover quietly 5 meters above the ground. This indeed got the attention of the smugglers, who began firing up at the ship. Alex wondered how long it would take them to figure out that their weapons were useless against her ship's shields. If only she could direct her ship to move over the shelter, she might be able to get on board. Once she was protected by shields, she might be able to bargain her way to freedom. Of course, if the smugglers had too many port personnel under their control, any attempt at negotiation would be futile. Praglio moved up next to Alex and looked toward the Sweet Journey. "Good idea. I think, however, that your ship is doomed." Before Alex could ask why, she saw a glaring light around her ship that she recognized as the shield's response to laser fire. It seemed the laser cannon that had shot their ground car was now firing on the Journey. How much firepower do they have? Enough to punch through any commercially available shielding. Probably enough to punch through 50% of military shields as well, Praglio replied. They may be trying to salvage the cargo by going slowly. If they wanted to completely destroy the ship, it would be in flames right now. Be assured they will work the shields down and bring the ship down as well. The meaning of his words slowly sunk into Alex's consciousness. She would never get a chance to negotiate anything, and she was likely to die. Even if she could somehow survive the standoff they were in, her ship would be destroyed. Her entire lifestyle was coming apart before her, and she knew there was nothing she could do to stop it. Panic flowed through her for only a moment, before a numb sense of fatalism replaced it. So now I die. Go ahead and take cover, and wait for them to come get you. I'm sure you'll be forgiven for being taken captive, although you may never get that rank you wanted, Alex said. I don't want another innocent life taken on my account. Praglio peered at her curiously, then turned away. I think not. Come with me. Alex turned to stare at him as he stepped down into the main room of the shelter. She hesitated, then followed. What more could go wrong? Alex was shocked when she descended the stairs into the main room. A door that hadn't been there before was now open, revealing an underground passageway lit by simple electric lights. Praglio stood at the doorway, watching her reaction. As they stared at each other, another man appeared from behind Praglio. The newcomer was not in the uniform of the port, but wore combat gear that did not resemble that of the co-op military. Are you coming or staying to die? The newcomer asked Alex. Who are you? Alex asked, shaking her head in disbelief. If she had not seen it open herself, she would never have believed that there was a concealed door in the room. The man paused before answering and looked at Praglio. Praglio nodded. I am Cause, the newcomer answered. Commander Cause. Sergeant Praglio contacted us and informed us that you were both in danger of losing your lives. His original interest was in saving himself, but it appears you have been selected for saving as well. Otherwise, he would have shot you before meeting me. Alex blinked, not comprehending. She repeated, Who are you? Commander Cause, of the Axaran Resistance Force 7 Alpha. Come now or dies. We have no more time to waste babbling here. Cause turned away and strode back into the underground passage. Praglio raised his eyebrows at Alex and gestured for her to follow Cause. The explosion of an artillery shell outside of the blast shelter and the following twanging of shrapnel bouncing around the upper area made up Alex's mind. She darted past Praglio and ran down the passage to catch up with Cause, who was jogging briskly away from the shelter. Alex's ears first detected a soft hushing noise, followed by an increase in air pressure. A moment later, Praglio caught up to Alex and Cause. By that time, Alex had learned that the Axaran Rebellion was using the Yandol system as one of its main bases, and that each of the civilized planets had been deeply infiltrated. They had underground passages connecting all of the blast shelters in each of the ports on every planet to assist in moving personnel and cargo on and off the planets. Alex had also learned that Cause was going to leave Yandol 7A for a secret destination, and he had invited her to accompany him. Doors shut and were sealed in, Praglio reported. Sergeant Praglio, thought Alex, and she had thought he was probably a coward. He continued, My guess is they'll do heavy damage to the upper shelter before checking the bunker room below. They'll be surprised to find no bodies. Cause slowed to a walk, and Alex and Praglio matched his pace. You will inform them that you were able to escape after your ground car was hit. They may be suspicious, but we will have you relocated before they can prove anything. As for the lack of Alex's body, let them wonder. Cause turned to Alex. Can you still contact your ship? I can try. I don't know how well the Minilink will work underground. She looked at Cause and shrugged. What difference does it make? Your ship will be destroyed or damaged severely and then repaired to be used by Perrine and his cohorts later. Try to make contact. You might be able to thwart their plans, Cause mused, as much to himself as to Alex. Alex shrugged again and pressed the button on the Minilink. A tiny green light indicated that she had made contact. Report shield integrity and structure status. Shields down 80%. Structure intact. That's that, Alex stated. She looked startled as she realized what Cause had said. You know about Perrine, Cause nodded. We've been watching him for some time. We considered using him, but found him to be too untrustworthy. He has no morals, no sense of right and wrong. Since then, I've been looking for a way to put him out of business. At a basic level, his operation is too similar to ours, and that poses a danger. He may already be suspicious of us. I believe he is with his crew at your ship. Command it to self-destruct. Alex stopped walking. Her mouth opened in denial, but she dropped her gaze to the ground. There was no saving the sweet journey, and she didn't want it used by Perrine. If she ordered it to self-destruct, she would cause severe damage to the port, and Perrine and those working on the ship would perish in the blast. With one stroke, she would likely strike down Perrine, Raven, and most of the others who had orchestrated her setup. But it was her ship. It was the sweet journey. It held countless memories, and it was her main home. More than that, the sweet journey was her life. Begin auto-destruct, set for 10 seconds. Alex finally spoke into the minilink. An empty feeling inside her threatened to consume her. Verify, the computer responded calmly. If only it understood its fate. Begin auto-destruct, set for 10 seconds. Alex replied, trying without success to keep her pain out of her voice. Victor 3 Victor Delta 8 Victor. Sequence started. When the ground shook from the explosion 10 seconds later, Kaz and Praglio had to grab at a wall to steady themselves. But Alex was on the floor of the passage already, her head in her hands, and tears running down her face. She had the grim satisfaction of revenge, but there would be no more sweet journeys. She didn't even notice that sections of the ceiling of the passageway had fallen nearby, and Kaz and Praglio let her have a moment of silence before urging her to get up and move on. To what? Alex asked, staring up at Praglio. To what? She demanded of Kaz. I just destroyed my reason for living. Nonsense, Kaz replied, but his voice was gentle. I will take you to our local headquarters. We will then arrange for your transport to whatever system you want, and as long as you agree to never report our location, you will never hear from us again. Or if you'd like, we can help you rebuild your business. Alex stood up, shaking her head. I can't see that far ahead. Lead on, I don't know where I'm going. Kaz nodded and turned away. 2 days later, Alex stood under a clear dome on the dark side of Yandol 2, the only non-rotating of the 4 innermost Yandol planets. After leaving the underground tunnels below the port on Yandol 7A, Kaz had smuggled Alex off of the planet and flown in a super-shielded vessel toward Yandol itself. She then learned about how, from its earliest days, the Axaran Rebellion had used Yandol 2 as a center of operations. Ships moving to and from the Axaran settlements were shielded specifically for the close approach to the star, and the times they could move at all were limited. Only when they were completely sure they would not be observed would they venture to move into, or out of, the center of the Yandol system. Alex stared upward through the dome, peering in the general direction of Lopez. Occasionally her eyes flicked toward the dot of light that she suspected was Yandol 7A, but each time she let her attention drift in that direction, her tears blurred her vision. After many long hours of talking to Kaz and Praglio, Alex had sworn into the rebellion. She would visit her home in the Lopez system one more time to collect the few belongings she could not bear to part with, and after that, she would be in the service of the rebellion. Had there been a chance to resume business, Alex would have purchased a ship and made the attempt. But less than a day after the final fate of the sweet journey, Kaz had informed her that her likeness was being distributed by the co-op as a criminal to be shot on sight. The message Kaz had received indicated that the authorities on Yandol 7A didn't know if Alex had survived the blast or not, but they wanted to make sure that she would never run a business again. This is a crazy universe, Alex said to the stars. But if anybody can make it better, we will do it. I will do it. Power off General Arda turned to face the young lieutenant standing in the doorway. Report, we are within range, the lieutenant answered, barely suppressing a combination of fear and eagerness that the aging warrior recognized from his own past battles. Commence the attack. Not far away in the eyes of General Arda, but quite distant to the mind of one who had only traveled our state once to pick up a load of hogs, Bobby Rannoch opened another cold beer and wondered what he would do if the weather stayed so hot over the coming weekend. The air conditioner was broken again, so he had an old electric table fan turned all the way up, but it didn't seem to help much. The game on TV was almost over. He had already muted the volume and put his new country favorites tape in his boombox. Not for the first time, he regretted that his ex had ended up with the big stereo, but the little portable was better than nothing. The brilliant flash and spray of sparks from the TV, followed by darkness and silence, caught Bobby off guard. What the? Slipped from his lips quietly as he looked around. The sun had gone down, but there was still just enough light in the sky to see, after his eyes adjusted. He briefly wondered if his house had been hit by lightning, but there had been no thunderclap. A glance out the window confirmed that the house across the street was also dark. The sound of someone banging on his door startled Bobby again. Feeling a little uneasy, he grabbed his shotgun and headed toward the front of the house. He was relieved to see the old man from across the street on the other side of the screen door. "Bobby," old Tom Niston croaked excitedly. "You hear about it on the telly before it happened. You think they're gonna come here?" The younger man leaned his shotgun in the corner by the door, then answered, "Who are you talking 'bout, Tom?" "I didn't see nothing but the game. We're under attack," Tom nearly shouted. "It's aliens. I heard about it just before everything blew up." Bobby shook his head and gave a little laugh. "You been hitting the juice again, Tom. Go back home and sleep it off. The power will be back on by the time you wake up." Tom scowled. "I swore off that stuff when Shelley passed on, you know that." "Heed my—" The older man's voice trailed away as both he and Bobby became aware of a deep rumbling. The sound quickly grew louder and was soon overhead, but by the time they looked up, the source of the sound was already gone, fading into the distance. Bobby nervously reached for his shotgun again. "I dunno what that was," he said, "but I ain't heard nothing like that before. Or seen something move that fast. It was one of them UFOs," Tom insisted. "Listen. No sonic boom. You know it had to be going fast enough for one. Looks you got a battery radio. Maybe we can find out some news." Bobby nodded and gestured for Tom to follow him inside. The younger man grabbed the flashlight on the top of his refrigerator and started hunting for batteries for his radio. When the smell of burning plastic caught his nose, though, he rushed to his living room with the older man close behind. There was no flame, but the flashlight showed smoke rising up from Bobby's boombox. "Damn, let's try over at Darrell's," Tom suggested. "Somebody has to have something that works." General Arda looked up from his map. His primary advisor stood nearby, and behind his advisor stood one of the bipodal native sentient warriors in an enviropocket that provided the native with the planet's normal surface gases. It had been stripped of its fake furs and battle gear, and its wild eyes stared around like the caged animal that it was. "Assuming you are correct," the general asked, "and these clusters of hostile and non-hostile populations indicate political alliances, is there evidence of oppression against the non-hostile populations?" "Undetermined. There are signs of various internal hostilities, but we cannot find a specific pattern. The planet appears to be primarily chaotic," the advisor replied. "If this specimen has any wit left, and if we can communicate with it, we might learn more. I doubt it will prove sufficiently redeeming, however, and they have not mounted any resistance," General Arda asked with a note of curiosity. His advisor confirmed the report. "Attempt to communicate with this native, then," the general continued. "There is something unexpected here that I do not yet fathom." Darrell shook his head. "You guys are nuts. That was just some military plane flying over. Now go back home, and for crying out loud, Bobby, put your gun away." Darrell started to close his front door, but Bobby put his foot in the way. "This ain't one of them space TV shows," Bobby snapped. "It's real. Tom says he heard about it right before the power went out, and we just heard something go overhead faster'n we could look up, but without even a sonic boom. You're telling me that's a military plane, and I'm telling you there ain't no such plane. And I'm telling you," Darrell began again, but his wife interrupted from behind. "Here, you boys can use this," she said, pushing past Darrell with a small child's radio. "I can't right believe in no UFO stories, but if we need to know about something going on, we might as well find out if we can." Tom took the radio from the woman before Darrell could voice the objection showing in his face. "Thank you, Sarah, you're a sweet one. Let's see." The older man clicked on the radio and began slowly moving through the dial. Even on frequencies where a radio station should have been, there was nothing but static. "Go back slowly," Bobby spoke up. "I thought I heard something." He and Tom ignored the indignant snort from Darrell. As Tom slowly moved the dial back, a weak signal finally came through, and to their momentary relief as they stood there in the dark, it appeared to be a news broadcast. "Calm and where you are," the distant voice was saying. "Again, if you're just joining us, the news of the hour is that we appear to be under attack from forces beyond our world. Their craft were first detected when they were near Mars, and moments later the attack began. At this time, there have been no reports of direct casualties, as the attacks have been focused on disabling our electrical power supplies. High-tension power lines across the nation have been destroyed, and one moment, please. We are getting word that similar targets have been struck in other countries as well. It appears that industrialized nations around the world are bearing the brunt of what may be just the first stage of the attack. You are advised to remain calm and stay where you are. We have not had any reports of direct attacks on citizens or military personnel. At this time, no defense has been raised because their strike aircraft moved too quickly for our weapons. This is a frightening time for humanity. Please stay at home and stay calm. If we let our fear take over, we will increase our danger. Pray for us all. If you are just joining us, Tom turned off the radio and stared blankly at Bobby, then Darryl. Tears appeared in Sarah's eyes, but the men did not see them in the dark. Rhonda looked up in surprise, suddenly realizing that the thing in front of her was trying to talk to her. The noise was more of a whistle, but she could almost make out words. "What are you trying to say?" Talakmur backed away in startlement and then turned to the general's advisor. "Good, it does speak. I was concerned they might not all be capable of spoken communication. I think I will try your idea of using 3 similar questions, in hopes one gets close. I don't think I can properly analyze their language in a timely manner." He turned back to the natives sitting on the floor in the portable Enviro pocket. "Which be you logo? What am your slogan? Where is they title?" Rhonda stared. She was certain of it now. The alien was trying to talk, but she had to concentrate to make out any words. Did it just say logo and slogan? What was it talking about? "I don't understand what you are trying to say," she finally said. "That sounded rather long for a name," the advisor said. "Try different questions." Talak gestured his agreement with a hint of frustration. "Where be you brand?" he continued, attempting to reduce his tone to something closer to the natives. "Which am your name?" "What name?" Rhonda interrupted, realizing what the creature was trying to say. "You want to know my name. I don't even know what you are, and you want my name." "Well, my name is Rhonda Almason." Talak turned his attention back to the advisor. "I think that must be it. It said that word 4 times. If I understand the pattern correctly, her name is Rhonda Almason." Rhonda caught the reference to her name and spoke up. "Yes, Rhonda Almason, that is me," she said, pointing to herself and grinning slightly without realizing it. The advisor left abruptly to report the progress that Talak was making to General Arda, but Rhonda was already busy trying to decipher another set of questions. "Casualty reports are arriving slowly," the child's radio in Tom's hand hissed. "The loss of power by hospitals in poorer areas unable to afford generators has rendered them unable to continue normal functions, and patients who have relied on machines are dying. There are countless reports of fires from the massive electrical attack, and clearly the number of dead in the countries that have been attacked will rise into the hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. And of course, we have no idea what their overall intent is. All we know so far is that we have not been able to fight back at all." Tom switched the radio off. "They're getting too glum," he said after a moment to the group of neighbors who had gathered on Darrell's lawn. "We'll knock down one of them flyers soon and get some information. Then we can turn the tables a bit." He was trying to sound positive, but nobody responded. Tom fell silent too. General Arda traced several lines on one of the maps. "These make no sense. I realize the natives are not advanced, but these patterns are all wrong. Why would they bother to attack us if they can't even make the weapons in a reasonable form?" "Agreed," the advisor stated. "It would seem they are not satisfied with their own wars and have struck out at us at the first opportunity. Their weapons are so crude that they do not have a focus beneath the lines. It is simply cropped vegetation." General Arda looked to his advisor. "Vegetation. That would help explain the weakness of their attack. That and the design of their weapons. But I cannot accept the motive. I don't understand," Rhonda snapped. "I have not attacked you. I am not attacking you. We have not attacked space or the moon or the stars or whatever it is that you are trying to tell me. We launch weather and communication satellites, and we've built some research stations. Our use of space is peaceful, at least most of it is. You aren't making sense." "Oh, what's the use? I don't even know if I understood attack right. Maybe you said something else. It'd be nice if you could talk normal, instead of that whistling, or whatever it is you do." "Damn it, I must be going crazy. I'm sitting here freezing my ass off, without a stitch of clothing, trying to talk to an alien, and telling it that it doesn't make sense." "Great," Talak backed away. He found it frustrating that the biped would start delivering long strings of babbling, rather than logically relying on basic constructs. He understood the natives' expressions for not understanding him, and he was beginning to think that it was denying the planet's attack. That would prove interesting, as it would mark a shift from basic communication to a crude level of politics. He sent a brief note regarding the possibility to General Arda and considered the next set of questions. He could get back to their motive for the attack later. General Arda looked down at the primitive planet. In the half-revolution of the planet during which they had conducted their counterattack, they had discovered incredible anomalies and behavior that could not be explained. The general was not religious and did not believe in coincidence, but he wondered, could they possibly have blundered so? Were the bipeds incredibly and terribly lucky to have constructed their weapons by accident? It was clear that they considered themselves warriors, and their domination of other life forms on the planet was unquestioned. If it was an accident, despite the minuscule odds, the natives would probably rejoice at the thought that they had constructed a weapon so far beyond their knowledge. But did they know? And if they did not, should they? Decisions, however, could not wait long for his consideration. His advisor stood expectantly by, with the native in tow in the Envira pocket. The final report from Talak had been truly interesting and troubling at the same time. A look of resignation passed over the general. Return it. I do not think they can reconstruct their weapons soon, and I am not convinced they knew what they were doing. Provide the bipeds with information about constructing proper devices. Then, if the attacks resume later, we will return and resume with their destruction. Otherwise, we can assume that our ordeals have been but a terrible coincidence, small solace that it might be. If that is what you deem proper, the advisor said, making clear his disagreement, then so shall we proceed. None of us will still be alive to know the result, but with luck our own technology will have improved by then to allow a faster and more decisive counterattack. Bobby looked toward the sun as it sank lower in the west. His neighborhood was quiet, in stark contrast to riots elsewhere in the world. The aliens had stopped their attack around noon, and now there was a sense of dread, of waiting on death row for an unknown executioner. Tom sat with Bobby on the porch of Bobby's house, the radio silent between them. They had tuned in from time to time throughout the day, but the hours had only offered a climbing death toll and little other news. There were millions dead now, and normal activity in industrial nations had ground to a halt. Those nations with less stable governments were collapsing into anarchy. Don't suppose it will be any different, but the silence is killin' me, Tom spoke up as he reached for the radio. With a soft click, the radio came to life, and the two men heard a female voice they hadn't heard yet on that station. About pulses emanating from Earth. The only thing I'm really sure about is that they don't want us to ever construct high-voltage power lines the way we have in the past. I was given a device that displays images that appear to be plans for what they want us to use as a replacement, but who knows when, or if we'll ever figure out how to make them. I have turned that device over to authorities in Washington, D.C. for analysis. The aliens have left the solar system, but they made it clear that they will return if we rebuild our power lines, and they plan to destroy the planet if they do return. That, ladies and gentlemen, continued a more familiar announcer voice, was Captain Rhonda Almason of the United States Air Force, who was apparently captured from her F-16 while in flight and taken aboard one of the alien craft for interrogation. As you heard it from her, the good news is that we have been spared from total annihilation. The bad news, I think we all know that already. Tramp Avatar. I was never a great believer in mysticism. My parents attempted to raise me as a church-going, God-fearing boy, which lasted tenuously until I was 12 or so. The older I grew, the more cynical and skeptical I became, until I relegated religion into the same class as notions such as ESP, seances, and other supernatural nonsense. Whether you believed in ghosts or the Holy Ghost, it all seemed the same to me. It all seemed a denial of the natural human mortality that I learned to love rather than fear. Is how we grow. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes leaping forward in a few moments. On a nondescript summer day, with heat as annoying as the brilliance of the sun, a day when I scolded myself for leaving my sunglasses at home, my perceptions of the universe turned suddenly back toward those weak spiritual roots. I'm not here to tell you there is or is not a God, but I know my own ignorance as I've never known it before. Knowledge. Now that is something to be skeptical about. Only fools trust their knowledge. Only fools believe themselves wise. What difference could I have found in this day? It started like every other drab, dull step toward the death I welcomed to end the ache of life. On the drive to work, my coffee spilled in the rental car, the one putting me deeper into debt as my own car added even more debt at the hands of a snide mechanic. And the report from my boss, the reason for little sleep the night before, was spattered with brown. A confused freight train engineer tied up traffic, making me late and sparking the ire of that same boss, who whined again how the tight job market was her only reason for not replacing me. The woman I'd spent far too much on and woke up that morning without for the first time in weeks, ostensibly my girlfriend, called me just before lunch to tell me she was moving out to go live with this nice guy she met at the bakery. These trivial events just marked it as a day like any other. Paul, the voice of my boss, interrupted my lack of focus on my work shortly after midday. I need this packet taken to the downtown office immediately. With an excuse for fresh air and a break from her owlish stare, I jumped at the chance to leave, even if it meant squinting the entire drive. Traffic was light, but the signals were against me, and not once did I pass through an intersection without waiting for a green. At the last light before my destination, I noticed a man with dirty face and dirtier clothes standing on the corner with a cardboard sign. Need cash for bus fare, or a beer, I thought as I accelerated past him. The downtown office was a large suite, leased in the basement of the old city library. The imposing entry to the building, with huge columns of light red marble, earned a grin from me as I imagined some architect fresh out of college, blowing his first major budget on his pet architectural fantasy. An orgasm of stone, as it were. The rest of the building was more subdued, although that same marble was in evidence throughout. I drove past the grand entrance and pulled into the parking lot on the far side, noting again how badly the lot needed repaving. Such trivial details I noticed then, so unsuspecting. My first overt clue about a fundamentally richer universe hit me as I climbed out of the rental car and stood up straight. My parking spot, as I might as well have bet on, was about as far from the library building as I could get. On the far side, next to nearest of the red marble columns, I noticed a dark figure that seemed familiar. Was it the fare-seeking bum off the street? My eyes didn't have time to register much detail about the person, distracted as they were by the sudden appearance of large, colorful bubbles that floated out in two lines from that distant person's fingertips. They flew toward me and passed close by on either side of my head, soundless, opaque, and swirling with rich hues. As quickly as they started, the last disappeared past me, and there was no sign of the man by the building, although I thought I heard deep laughter in the distance. I looked about but could see no sign of the man, the bubbles, or any indication that others in the area had seen anything unusual. I must get to bed early tonight, I muttered as I started walking away from the car. That was just too strange for words. Deep in thought, I climbed the smooth steps from the sidewalk to the library entrance. I glanced about, then chided myself for expecting to see the mysterious figure. I was much too old to believe in magic, but sleep deprivation was an easy enough thing to understand. Easy isn't always right, of course. You'll have to leave your dog outside. I stared at the woman by the door. Was she talking to me? I glanced about again and was surprised to see a small white dog of undetermined breed at my heel. Not understanding why it was following me or when it decided to do so, nor having any idea to whom it belonged, I just stared at it for several moments. Is there a problem? The woman asked, sounding annoyed. Of course she was annoyed. I had a bad habit of annoying people without really trying. No, what could I say? Would she understand that my average day was turning out to be not so average after all? Sit, I told the dog. It looked up at me and, to my relief, decided to sit. When I moved to walk past the woman, I thought again that I heard distant laughter, deep and rich, as if I was providing great humor to someone unseen. In the cool depths of the basement, outside the door to my employer's suite, I realized that suddenly my stomach was feeling better, even though I hadn't recalled it being upset before. The notion struck me that I was suffering from food poisoning, or perhaps a flu, and the oddities of the afternoon made comfortable sense again. Apart from drugs, there's not much like a fever to play tricks on your mind. With scant conversation, I delivered the packet to the receptionist. Amidst her chatter about the weather and family news, and ample evidence of a profound lack of original insight into politics, I managed to convey that the papers were urgent. She nodded and moved them to the bottom of a pile of papers in a tray marked satellite, which, I suppose, referred to our satellite office. I didn't care much that the papers wouldn't be handled in a timely manner, only that I had delivered them, and the message to expedite their handling. The papers mattered very little to me personally that afternoon, and of course now not at all. Amongst the boredom, frustration, anger, and related emotions I felt that morning, I wasn't expecting fear. I suppose nobody really expects fear, which is what gives it such power. As I climbed the stairs up from the basement, a deep rumbling demanded attention, and fear surged forth as the building began to shake. Even without any personal experience, I immediately recognized that I was being caught in an earthquake, and suddenly the orgasm of stone and its traces throughout the building did not look amusing at all. Foolishly, I partook in a rush of library patrons heading out toward the street, out toward that mass of red marble which once seemed so solid. Once outside the door, but before descending to the street below, the shaking of the earth and the panic in my body stopped me. I fell to my knees and stared up at the cracking and crumbling rockwork over my head and around me. Bits of rock, some large and some small, were already cascading down, and I watched as massive cracks spread through the columns. Surely the entire grand entrance would crush me, and the others stopped around me within moments. And then there was laughter. Deep, booming, loud laughter. Put your fingers in your ears and still hear it clearly, laughter. And a warm, yellow light that changed the look of the red marble to orange. The rumbling of the earth, the falling of the stone, and the laughter all stopped together. People around me were crying, mostly in fear and shock, although I suppose some were injured. I didn't cry, I listened. There was a laughing voice in my head. At least, nobody else seemed to hear it. Paul, I am you and you are me, and now I'll try to set you free. Paul, solid life and bland belongings, all of these are spiritual wrongings. Paul, the road is ready, your way clear, just come with me and discard fear. Paul, my first reaction was that I was going crazy. This must, I reasoned, be the first signs of schizophrenia, probably triggered by the stresses of the day. I looked up at the cracked columns around me and wasn't sure if I should be thankful that they had not ended my life moments before. When I looked down again, there was a cardboard, handwritten sign at my feet. Need cash for bus fare. I picked up the sign and studied it. The voice in my head was quiet for a moment, so it seemed like a good time to get moving. Move I did down the once smooth stairs, down to the street, and toward the parking lot. Paul, I turned toward the voice. This time it was thankfully outside my head, but I could not understand. On the road beside me sat a low, sleek, yellow convertible sports car, and at the wheel sat the most gorgeous blonde I had ever seen. She beckoned to the seat beside her. It's time to go, Paul. There's nothing more for us here. It would not be an average day after all, I decided. I climbed in, and as she sped off, I threw the cardboard sign out over my shoulder. We've been on the road ever since. We've never been back to that city. I would avoid it if she wanted to return. There's nothing more there for me. I'm not sure what really happened that day, any more than I'm sure what is happening today. The only thing I'm sure about is my own ignorance, and it's a comfortable thing. Tea leaf technology, the teller stood silently by the table, his darkly hooded face concealing any emotion, allowing the cluster of seated men to have their fun deriding his cult. The slanders rarely varied, but the speaker always laughed as if it were an original thought. When the laughter died away and no further insult seemed forthcoming, the teller nodded his head slightly and steeled himself for the next onslaught before repeating his question for the second of 3 times. Always 3 times, the galactic population assumed it a ritual. The cult demanded consistency. Would you care to know your fortune, sirs? The teller repeated. Track off, one of the men snapped with a heavy accent. Ask again and get on with you. When no one else said anything, the teller repeated his question the final time. He noted the fast mood shift at the table and assumed he would get no takers from this group. He was about to shuffle over to the next table in the restaurant when he was surprised by one of the men speaking up. I don't know why there's such a traditional tolerance for the likes of you, the man said, but I guess you're about as amusing as a minstrel. What the hell, you can read my coffee grounds and tell me what beautiful wench I'll bed tonight. The teller silently extended his hand for the traditional donation while the man's companions erupted in a mixture of laughter and derision. There was no set amount, many customers. The cult called them leeches, took the telling for free. It wouldn't matter, the teller understood, and he was new enough to the cult to feel mild surprise when a customer actually did pay. He didn't let that surprise show when a few coins clinked into his hand. A generous one, the teller noted as he shifted the coins to his mostly empty purse. He extended his other hand for the man's cup. Coins with the right, cup with the left. Consistency or ritual, the effect was the same. After tossing back the last of the hot, dark brew, the seated man grinned at the jeers of his comrades and handed the empty mug to the teller. With a slow, silent sniff, the teller detected the blend, the pseudo-brand, and the need to decalcify the brewer. Given the contracts, he was shocked at the poor quality, but the rundown district in which the restaurant sat probably indicated hard water. This might be an issue for the next seminar. For now, a casual telling was in order. "Ah," the teller said softly, as he was required to do, staring into the depths of the cup. The next few moments would be stylized ad-lib, but he would not stray from the path defined by the cult. The swirl of grounds he saw was meaningless, they always were. But the cup held the key to the cult's survival. "Money, influence," the teller began in a slightly droning voice. "A friend will give you a gift of money soon. Beware a drain of your influence. Isolation, hunger, you will travel alone. You must prepare well for your journey, or risk a loss of strength. Passion, fury, your love for a woman will be rejected. You will blame another man. These 6 things I have seen, all matters of the future are affected by your actions today." The man with the accent snorted at the teller. Nice and general, as always, and always the caveat that he might prevent your telling from coming true by something he does. What a waste of time and money. Go bother some other innocent patrons, I've had my fill of you. The teller kept his attention on his customer, who then spoke up to answer the other man. "Ah, shut your hole, Kozig. My money, my laughs. No harm done and nobody's forcing you to believe anything. You're forcing me to sit through it," the man named Kozig snarled. "I thought we met today to do business, not attend a carnival." One of the other men chuckled. "Kozig's afraid of his future," he leered, to another explosion of laughter from the other men. "Bunk," Kozig snapped. "Bunk that I'm afraid, bunk that this hooded freak can tell it." Bunk, with an angry sigh, the man sat back and scowled at the teller. "Well then," spoke up the man who'd just received his telling, "if you're not afraid, you'll get your fortune told right." "Wrong," Kozig exploded to the delight of his companions. "I'm tired of wasting my time. Get out of here, teller." The teller nodded, face still enshadowed by the cowls of his hood, and he turned away to leave. He was surprised yet again when the man who joked about Kozig being afraid spoke up sharply. "Teller, wait." The teller turned back and stood silently, wondering what would come next. The cult had trained him well, as with all recruits, to recognize danger signs, and now he considered that it might be time for a hasty exit. In the name of found revelation, of course, for fear was never to be shown. "Close your face, Braca," Kozig hissed. "We've wasted enough time as it is. I can't afford to sit through more lunacy." The man named Braca snorted. "You haven't had enough orders lately. To keep your so-called wife in the wine, she must need to tolerate your stench. You've got more free time on your hands than any other man at this table. Except for the teller, but he doesn't count. You want our business. Then humor us." Kozig stared hatefully at Braca, the muscles under his right eye twitching in anger. With a final glare around the table and a sigh to underscore it, Kozig relented. "But I ain't paying a damn thing for it. Being a leech is your nature," Braca smirked. The teller fought to conceal his startlement. The term leech for non-payers was an in-cult usage, not expected to be known by outsiders. What did this man know? Was he a plant? That would mean that Kozig was a pre-qualified candidate. And Kozig did fit much of the profile, but not enough that he'd stood out as a candidate before. Or was it mere coincidence? The 2 men seemed at odds anyway, so it was possible. It was time to decide. The teller extended his right hand for the donation he knew would not appear. Ritual consistency demanded no less. When Kozig merely thrust his emptied mug of tea forward, the teller lowered his right hand and accepted the cup with his left. A glance and a silent sniff, and he made his decision. Kozig was a candidate. "Ah," the teller began, as all present knew he would. "Blood, children, there will be an accident. You will be the sole eyewitness. Boredom, stars, you will travel to a nearby planet. Somebody is awaiting your arrival there. Contracts, bank, your family wealth will rise unexpectedly. Obscured clauses will be overridden. These 6 things I have seen, all matters of the future are." The teller let his voice trail off, keeping his attention on the cup, but watching Kozig and Braca peripherally. "What?" Kozig snapped. With his heart rate rising slightly in nervous anticipation, the teller used his right hand, concealed in the folds of his robe, to quickly key in one of several thousand codes on a keypad implanted under the skin of his right thigh. He felt the faint tingle in his left hand that let him know the cup was charged, and he swirled the small amount of liquid in it slightly. "I cannot," the teller said softly, his voice reflecting horror. With another swirl of the cup, he was satisfied with the pattern of tea leaves on the bottom, and he turned off the charge with a single hidden keystroke. The non-toxic metals impregnated in the leaves had arranged the pattern to match the temporary magnetic pattern in the base of the mug, the technological culmination of a deeply rooted, galaxy-wide, organized con. It didn't take much imagination to see the outline of a skull traced by the leaves. Payment was coming. "Cannot what?" Kozig demanded, his anger waxing again. "I cannot." "I'm sorry," the teller continued, "but I cannot tell you more. I apologize to have wasted your time. I must go." He set the cup on the table, giving it a slight shake to disrupt the pattern that might have been too obvious. It was a well-trained caution, repeated out of habit. "Tell me more about what?" Kozig insisted, but the teller shook his head and began to move away. A concealed glance toward Braca displaced any suspicion of him as a plant, for he looked too confused for it to be an act. It had been mere coincidence. That was much better for the teller, as long as Kozig reacted predictably. As he drifted away toward the kitchen doors, the teller listened to Kozig in the background. "Gimme that cup," Kozig growled, reaching to pick it up. His voice was noticeably shaken when he handed it to one of the other men and asked, "What do you make of that?" The other man hesitated. I'd make of it that I'm glad it's not mine," he finally replied. Only a moment later, the teller felt Kozig's hand on his shoulder, and he was yanked around to face his latest customer. His very own candidate. "Is this some kind of prank?" Kozig shouted at the teller, drawing the attention of other restaurant patrons. "I don't know what you mean, sir," the teller said quickly. "I must go." No, please don't go." Kozig's tone suddenly turned to pleading. "Am I going to die? Is it me? You have to tell me." "How am I going to die? I cannot," the teller exclaimed, his voice sounding shocked but with a mental grin beginning to grow. "Please, sir, I must leave." "Tell me, you filthy rat," Kozig exploded. "You can see how I'll die, so tell me. Or I'll kill you." When the teller said nothing, Kozig's tone changed again. Please, you must tell me how I'll die. You have to give me a chance to avoid it." "Can it be avoided?" "Or delayed?" The teller paused significantly before repeating, but with less stress behind it. "I cannot." "It can be avoided," Kozig said softly, before his voice rose again. "You must tell me. Have some compassion." "I'll do anything, but please, you must tell me how to avoid my death that you saw." "Please, nothing in the future can be guaranteed," the teller responded, shaking his head. He noticed without looking that the other patrons had mostly returned their attentions to their meals, but word of this disturbance would spread. The teller pressed a few hidden keys to transmit a standard message to the cult. No candidates would be tried within a 5-light-year radius for the remainder of the standard year. Kozig's face was wet and red with emotion. "I don't need your guarantees, I just need hope. Please, you must tell me how to avoid the death you saw waiting for me." "You must." I cannot. I will do anything. I'll pay you however much you want. Just tell me." The teller shook his head. "No payment is enough for this. It is not allowed." "I simply cannot," Kozig barked. "Yes, you keep telling me that. Maybe it's easy for you. You're not the one dying. I don't care what is allowed right now. I want an answer, and I'm telling you I'll pay you for it." Ziff. "No, it's not a matter of payment. What do you want from me? What do I need to do? How much must I pay you? Tell me." When the teller didn't reply, Kozig went on. "I'll give you access to my bank account. You can take what you want. I can make more money. I can't make more days of my life without you. Tell me. You've got to tell me, you stupid bastard." The teller raised his hands slowly, palms facing out, to quiet the other man. "I cannot take your pay," he said slowly, "and I must not tell you all I see. But perhaps I can suggest a path that may lead you past the greatest danger. Will you accept that? Yes. Will you, of your own free will, donate at least 50% of your monetary wealth to the Order of Tellers? Yes. Yes. Just tell me what to do." "Very well," the teller nodded slowly. "I cannot guarantee that what I suggest will prevent, wholly or partially, what I have foreseen. 6 nights hence, you might go to the Temple of Arukas in time for the feeding of poor children. You might volunteer to help with the labor of the feeding, and you might then sleep the night on the temple steps. You might spend the following day praying at the temple. You may wish to do these things rather than anything else you might have planned for those hours. And you may wish to end these suggested activities, if you are still alive, with a suitable donation. I urge you to understand, sir, I cannot guarantee any future events. And I feel I have said too much already. The teller bowed his head deeply and turned to leave. Teller Kozig spoke up to his back. The teller paused but did not turn. Thank you. And I'm sorry. The teller nodded minimally and shuffled toward the door to the kitchen. Tellers always entered and departed through the kitchen. This was tradition, ritual, consistency. In the back room, Teller, the restaurant owner, spoke up from beside the sinks, gesturing toward a nearby door. He continued when he and the teller were alone. That was sloppy. You're new, right? Somewhat, the teller agreed, keeping his head down. I want my due and in advance. Coins clinked onto the table from the teller's hand. This is all I collected in donations, and you will be paid your percentage when his donation is received. I'll be waiting. The teller began to move toward the door. One more thing, owners. Decalcify your equipment. You are in violation. The discrepancy will be reported, and your percentage reduced accordingly. A moment later, the teller was gone from the restaurant.